and welcome to Spiritual Diner, a brand new live stream about consciousness, personal growth, manifesting, spirituality, learning to love yourself, expanding community, and so much more.
And each week, we prepare an engaging menu of healthy perspectives to nourish your mind, body, and spirit as we continue on this fabulous, exciting journey called life.
I am Vash Boddie. I am a journalist, a manifester, a healer, but I like to call myself a coach, recipient of messages from a spirit guide, and a mildly hungover American. Happy July 5th, everybody.
And I'm Tammy Reyes. My spiritual journey began when I was 6 years old, and I became aware that I was extra sensitive to animals and different kind of energies. I was a school teacher until 10 years ago. When I retired, I love animals, travel, learning, and all things beautiful, and I'm so excited to share everything that we learn with you.
Yes, indeed. So together, we bring you Spiritual Diner, and today's Blue Plate special is just about ready, so get yourself seated.
And in this episode, we're serving up a better understanding of and ways to develop our consciousness.
We're also serving up a side of awareness that perception and intention helps to expand our consciousness.
Wait till you see what we have for dessert.
And if you're new here, be sure to subscribe so you'll always get alerted when we're open, and you'll know what's being served at the Spiritual Diner.
There is no finer diner in all the universe.
Not at all. So let's start taking you through the menu.
Well, Vash, we always share our experiences, and the last couple years have been humdingers. And one thing we wanted to start off with today was the importance of when we go through major life changes, such as losing dear ones and parents. And your mom, Edith, passed away recently. That brought up a lot of feelings, realities, and different connections that you made that were powerful. And we're dedicating this to her today. Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
You know what? I actually would, because part of what this journey is, it's all about intentions. It's all about many things that can happen along the way that make things possible. Many people may or may not know that you and I are high school friends. And the way that we've been able to become high school friends is because when I was young, my mother allowed my sister and me to go live with my dad. And in 2020, I realized that the bond that I would have had with my mother didn't happen because I grew up with my dad. And I came back to Philadelphia to help take care of my mom as she was going through Alzheimer's. And I needed to heal that whole experience. And because my mom had dementia, it was very difficult to have conversations with her. But as she was passing, the day that she passed, I was able to tell her that what she did by allowing me to go live with my dad allowed me to become the person that I am. And I do a lot of great stuff on the planet. That was enough to soothe her soul. So the day after, to just get into how things happen and the importance that people play in our lives. The day after my mom passed, the voice that guides me told me to go to the place to clean up her space because she was in a nursing home. And as I was leaving, I was walking down the hall towards the nursing station where the elevators were. And as I got closer, there was a person who was on the dimension floor who was speaking to someone saying, I want to see my family. Let me see my family. I want to see my family. And as I got closer, she turned and looked at me and she goes, "You're not my family. You're a guest." And I was like, "Yes, I'm a guest," because I'd seen this woman before. Well, as I turned away, she kept walking toward me and I looked at her and she just looked different than what she normally did. And, I'm paying attention to the escalator or the elevator. And out of the corner of my eye, I see this hand that looks just like my mom's hand, because my mom would always touch me in certain ways when she wanted my attention or wanted me to do something. And it always made me feel like I was somehow being a little bit I don't want to say like maybe manipulated, but I didn't recoil. And this person touched me and said, "Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you. I love you. It's time for you to go now. I love you. I love you." And then the hand disappeared, the hand fell away. And then the woman, said, "What am I doing here?" And the nurse who was next to her said, "Well, Rebecca, you were going down the hall." She goes, "Yeah, I'm really tired." And she walked away. And I looked at the other nurses who were there and like to say, like, "Did you just see what happened and hear what that person just told me?" Because that is, my mother called me sweetheart. And one of the nurses said, "She's been talking to your mom a little while before you came down that hall. So she definitely said goodbye to you." So part of the reason why I came to take care of my mother, hi Mom, was to have a couple of different experiences. I wanted to heal my relationship with my mom, but I also wanted certain things to happen in my life that gave me the credibility to share them with the rest of the world and have them be irrefutable. There were witnesses that saw that. There were people who told me what I saw. And it allowed me to have the confidence to even do this show with you called Spiritual Diner, where we get to talk about all of these different things and share our experiences and our wisdom with the world as we help everyone achieve a higher level of consciousness. So I just wanted to thank you for allowing me to show that, to show my mom, Edith Smith, to thank her for helping catapult me into another space like only a mother can. So, Mom, I love you. Thank you.
Oh, hi, Mom, Edith. Sometimes maybe it isn't clear to us until we lose our parents, or those last meetings, interactions with our parents can be so powerful. And so I really relate to what you're saying about your mom. And in the last couple of years, almost 2 years ago, I lost my biological dad. And then just last March, I lost my stepdad. And so both of those were really profound too, although they're such different people and different situations. But I know that when I lost my bio dad, that was kind of an impetus to kick me upside the head and say, "Get going. You guys try to pick up your spiritual diner and move forward and everything." But the profound thing that happened with him that I think is a message for everybody, and it really reflects the work that I try to do, which is just to be a person that reflects love. And so here's the weird thing that happened when my bio dad was passing, and he was so frail looking and real skeleton and skinny. And he gave me the best gift that I have had of yet, because that me and my bio dad weren't really close. We were for different reasons, but we always loved each other and everything. And so when he was there in the bed and he was very, very frail, he started to say, I'm so sorry. I didn't do what I should have. I wasn't there for you enough, and so on, and taking accountability for those things that were, hurtful. And I just said, "Well, it's okay, Dad. You did the best. We all do the best that we can. You did the best you can. And I love you. It's all good." And he said, "I knew you were going to say that." And when he said that, there was a shift. And I was able to see into his body, past his rib cage, and there was this beam of light that went like from his throat chakra all the way down to his navel area. And it reminded me of those fluorescent lights that are in my garage. But it was like a beam of light, and I was shown and told in a really profound way that regardless of what kind of person we're dealing with, there is a beam of light within every single person. Within every person, there is a beam of light that radiates love, and it's a remembrance of where they came from, and it's a remembrance that we are all beings of light, which means when we're here in our lifetimes in this 3D planet Earth school experience, regardless of the path we take or how we may appear to others, we are still at the core a base of light. And that kind of encouraged me. It just gave me, it was kind of like peeling away a layer of confusion or hurt or something. And I just came out of that really empowered. So I don't know how to say to my dad, his name was Stanley, thanks, Dad.
How
So
amazing. How amazing. I mean, and we're going to go into so much of everything that you just said during the course of the show, not this particular episode, but of course, over the course of Spiritual Diner, because that notion that we are all beings of light underneath whatever experience that we're having here on this plane is so essential, because we're all having our own experience. And regardless of how that manifests here, at the core, we're still light. We'll go back to light. And that's the thing that we really, truly, truly need to remember.
yeah. And when we get that, it kind of gives us a feeling of connectedness and helps us to tap into that notion that we are all one, which is a really big idea. And it sounds kind of trite sometimes to say that we are all one. But the more I do this work, and I'm going on 30 years now, the more it's concrete to me that we are all one.
Yeah.
So, you know, those experiences that we had with our parents were just events to further expand our consciousness and also kind of give us a new appreciation and love for that whole process of releasing our parents and loved ones. And our
Absolutely. I mean, so that's a perfect lead in into our main topic today, which is for us to talk about consciousness.
Yeah. We're always seeming to talk about consciousness ever since we were little and different states of consciousness, goofy or not.
Exactly.
Remember when we first started brainstorming like a year and a half ago what consciousness was? And some of the things we came up with were you're in a different consciousness when you are intoxicated or when you're in grief or dealing through some kind of trauma. But I think our view of consciousness has really expanded since then. When I look at the list of what we came up with a year and a half ago, it's always expanding. And for us, at least, it's always been kind of funny to talk about these things. And I guess that's why I'm excited to do Spiritual Diner, because I think that we can talk about the heavy things, but with humor, because we're always cracking ourselves up and stuff.
Yes, indeed. And it really helps that we've been friends for so long, because we both know each other in a way that allows us to keep each other super intellectually honest, but also to explore who and what we are in a way that's really supported, so that we can share even more of who we are in this program. And I think that that really, really is super duper special. So, Tammy, why are we really starting with consciousness?
Because it always seems to be the thing that we come around to talking about.
Yeah.
And we both discovered, and we can give all these examples about that. We both discovered that when we consciously open up our thinking, thinking. I will learn how to talk. When we open up our thinking and declare that we want to expand our consciousness by saying something like, okay, universe, show me what's next for me. Or in your case, you said something like, okay, universe, I want to learn absolutely everything there is to know. That's all. But when we declare something like that, it opens up a window somehow. And there's so many examples that I can give with that. And so we hope that the more we talk about consciousness and our experiences and hear from viewers what their experiences are, will relate more and grow together. It's so profound. I can't reiterate enough that when you say, I'm ready to expand my thinking, show me what I need to know, universe, it happens. So I don't know if we want to give examples of that now or wait, but it really happens and it really works.
It most absolutely, definitely does. Well, before we get any further into the program, I just want to let people know that this is, if you're watching this live, which we hope you are, but if you're watching it on demand or listening to it on podcast, that's groovy too. But if you're watching it live with us on Wednesday, July 5th, it's an interactive broadcast. anywhere you're watching, whether it's on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, there is a place for you to go and type in a comment. And if you do, it'll show up for us, and we can either answer your questions, interact with your comments, commiserate in the love you're sending to us. So go into the comments, leave one for us. If you're watching this on demand later, you can still leave us a comment. Maybe we'll talk about it in the next episode, but we do definitely want to hear from you. So what I'd like to do, Tammy, is for us to talk about what is consciousness. And you and I went sort of, I don't want to say round and round about it, but we talked about different definitions of consciousness. And this is the one that we thought would be the most appropriate to have in this particular episode. Consciousness is the state of being awake and aware of one's surroundings. I'm going to say that again. The state of being awake and aware of one's surroundings. What does that mean to you, Tammy?
Well, every time I visit the idea of consciousness, I find that my views have changed, my feelings have changed, what I perceive has changed, whether it's a little tiny minute idea or something really mind-blowing. Mm-hmm. I try to remain grounded because a lot of what I experience is kind of freaky. And so I try to remain grounded, sane, and just take in the information, process it in a way that I can integrate it if it resonates with me. If not, I let it go. And so the idea of consciousness is always, always expanding for me.
Yeah. So when I was thinking about it, there is a particular word that I am super duper fond of when I think about consciousness. And that word is Umwelt. It's a German word, and it means the world as it is experienced by a particular organism. I find this to be extremely powerful because that means when you're talking about an organism, that means that anything from the pseudopods, the little one-cell animals that live in our bodies, etc., that everything that exists has a world that it experiences. And within that world, they have awarenesses that are only specific to who and what they are. And I use that as I look at the world around me, including all the individual people. So there's this sense that although I am not that person has a whole entire experience about them that is valid, that requires and deserves compassion, might need assistance, etc. So, you know, when I think of consciousness and it being completely around the world, I'm going micro, I'm going micro, I'm going microscopic, because for me, that helps me with my consciousness.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I do is animal communication. Yeah. And I remember there was a time where I was reading a book by a really terrific animal communication lady. Her name is Penelope Smith, and she's out of the wine country, Santa Rosa, I think. And I remember reading how she had this experience with a banana slug, which is a big, funny looking thing. And it's also the mascot of Santa Cruz.
Yes.
It's really a freaky looking thing if you haven't seen a banana slug. And she was talking about going into the consciousness of the banana slug. And I'm like, what? And at that time, I had a sensitivity for bugs and creepy crawlies and, you know, things that most people would consider pests. I have a soft spot for. I've had a pet scorpion. I've had a pet tarantula. I rescue gophers and so on. But when she put the idea of connecting consciousness with a banana slug, I'm like, whoa, what the heck? What's that? And so I put myself in that position and imagined that banana slug. And sure enough, it was something to communicate with. Not like you and I talk, right, but the way I perceived its consciousness left me with the feeling, and you know, I feel it really strongly even today, that even though it's a kind of weird, creepy crawly, it has a consciousness and a purpose on this earth. And I'm not, for me personally, supposed to look at it with disgust, but with love. And that's what comes up whenever I'm having some kind of a situation where, like my ant problem right now, you know about my ant problem? I don't want to kill the ants. I just try to remove the thing that's attracting the ants. It gave me a sensitivity for every animal, an ant, a slug, a mammal, or people, giving me a better empathy for others that may be different.
Yeah. Yeah, that's quite remarkable. I mean, and I also think that these different things have different personalities. They have different wants and needs. They have different, they're all moving through their own environment with their own consciousness, which is
So that's a little weird stuff about consciousness, but we're also going to be using the term cosmic consciousness a lot. And so we want to clarify what I'm going to say it right, what cosmic consciousness is. So cosmic consciousness just means a higher form of awareness that connects us to all things imaginable in the universe and beyond, whether that is a banana slug or the person that's sitting next to you. An awareness and a connection to everything. So, one of the things that we were brainstorming was what has consciousness? Do animals have consciousness? What's your 2 cents on that?
Well, absolutely. I mean, this whole concept for me of Umwelt is that everything that is alive has a consciousness. And that even goes down for me to plants. I mean, there have been studies of plants radiating an aura about them, and that aura changes based on who might be approaching it with whatever intention that person is approaching it with, whether to nurture and love and give water or to do some harm to it. They've been able to actually record some of these auras. So for me, it is undeniable that all things that are alive have a consciousness.
Me too. I agree. And I remember in the 70s, before we moved to the Philippines, I didn't really have a lot of pets. So the plants were my pets, and I named them all after Greek gods like Archimedes and stuff like that. And so I'll talk about Archimedes. Archimedes was this Boston fern that I had that was just beautiful and striking. And I know that I know that it had feelings. I know that it responded to talking and stuff like that. Around that same time, I remember Prince Charles talking to plants, and everybody said, "You're a nut job." And my family responded rather poorly when I told them that I think, my plants have feelings and personalities. And just like you said, we have discovered that that is totally true. There's a lot of science to back that up. And it was an animal that really got me to open up my psychic and intuition abilities. And you knew her a long time ago, a black cat named Cobweb.
Yeah, I did.
And so to me, absolutely, every living thing has consciousness, plants, animals. And an exciting thing I'm learning about is the consciousness of water.
Uh-huh.
And that there's different studies that have been done. When people meditate on water, it actually changes the molecular structure of the water molecule to give it an individual shape and look, just like how every snowflake is different.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of research going on with water, and by using different groups of people to visualize certain things with the water, and it actually purifies and cleanses the water. And so water has energy too. That's why it's part of so many ceremonies, like baptism and all different kinds of things, holy water. One little thing that I like to do is I'm a bath taker, and I always take time, if I'm not too rushed, in the bath to just pour the water over me and just imagine that that's cleansing, because water has energy.
Mm-hmm.
So all those things have energy, every living thing.
Yeah,
What about
and just to even go off on that, part of my spiritual awakening happened when I lived in Los Angeles around the time that the movie What the Bleep Do We Know came out. Did you ever see that? And part of that in that movie, they talked about the ability to put words on containers of water to influence them. And since then, whenever I, my watering jugs for my plants, I always write love and, really positive affirmations on them to actually then feed them to my plants. So our intention can actually then change what I would then call the consciousness of water. And if it does it for things outside of our body, it also does it for things inside of our body. So it's important to always give yourself love, create things that generate that field around you, because it's all going to manifest within you.
It is. And listening to you makes me think of all the amazing things that happened to me when I was in water. Like when we lived in the Philippines, we had the privilege of being in the most beautiful place with fabulous beaches.
Yeah.
And I just remember, floating there in the South China Sea, looking down and seeing all kinds of critters because it was so clear. And I remember thinking at that time, wow, this is a miracle. This is a blessing that I have this experience. And I didn't appreciate it until I really started reflecting on the different things that led me, to develop my psychic abilities. But now that we're thinking of it, water was a biggie.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it really is. It super duper is. And we're going to get into that in other episodes. But I really wanted to make sure that we did establish that good, strong foundation that water is important. We are a lot of water. And then our words can shift and change the way that water behaves.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, we talked about love. I mean, I talked about putting love on the bottles of my water, but how does love and even fear affect how our brain operates, and then therefore affect how, it affects our consciousness?
Mm-hmm. When we're coming from a place of love, there's clarity. There's a certain trust that comes along with it. I can give a million stories. When we're coming from a place of love, it's almost as we're warriors. We're braver in the things that we do compared to coming from a place of fear. For example, one reason we are doing the spiritual diner and we're excited about it is because we've realized that when we embrace something with love, not coming from a place of fear, it opens up all these new windows and opportunities to grow. So one example I'll stick in is until recently, I was a little bit down on modern art. I'm kind of a person that likes the Renaissance and ancient art, but I thought, okay, I'm going to go in this art museum because I was drawn to the building. And as soon as I went in, I just felt like a big dope because I realized here's an example of something that I didn't want to do. I don't know if there was a level of fear or just not being tuned into it. But when I do it, it turns out it's a good thing. It improves me. It gives me more clarity, improves my psychic ability. So coming from a place of love, not fear, opens up our consciousness. And as an old school teacher, there's a lot of educational research that backs that up. When we create an environment for our learners where they can feel safe in asking questions or just being who they are, their brain opens up, the little dendrites and everything start doing their thing, and we learn and internalize that new learning better. If we're coming from a place of fear, let's say we're in a learning environment where we're not safe. For me, it would be a brutal example would be a church where I don't feel safe to really be me, but I go to every church that I could possibly pass when I'm traveling because of the architecture and everything. But for me, church raises almost like a little bit of fear because I have experiences of being told, no, you can't do that. You can't go there. And so I wonder how much I shot down or dismissed that I could have learned if I wasn't coming from a place of fear. Does that make sense? So for me, churches kind of do that, where I feel a little bit suppressed and I'm no longer coming from a place of love, but it's more of a place of dread or fear. Whenever we can identify that we're coming from a place of love, we're going to move forward. Things are going to open up. Our consciousness is going to expand. When we come from a place of fear, we actually shut down. And before I stop talking, remember yesterday, I don't know if you thought that I was going to figure out the little technical problem that I was having. And I just said, okay, universe, show me what to do. Technology gods, help me out. Because if you know me, you know that one of my fear issues is technology. And by golly, it was right after that that I figured out the problem that you were extremely patient about yesterday. So coming from a place of love, opens us up. Coming from a place of fear inhibits and stifles us. And that is one of the biggest things we want to share.
Absolutely. Because it's more than just, sometimes even just the outward. As I explained at the beginning, I've had a voice that has talked to me since I was very, very young. And the guidance that I get, I'm way more open to it when I am in a place of love, even if I have to shift that manually, do you know, to be able to receive the messages, because they are different when I am in a place where I'm open to receiving them, where I want to receive them because I want to make a change or a difference. Fear has a tendency to really shut us down and put us into survival mode, which is not always the most supportive for where we're going.
Right.
I'm not saying that fear does not have a place in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very clear about not saying that. But love resonates in a completely different space. And I think it's the ideal place to go. And in doing so, allows us to really, truly expand our consciousness. And I think that that's such an important thing.
Yeah. And when you come to some kind of a roadblock, if you think, okay, how can I approach this from a place of love, not fear, that automatically changes your perspective.
Completely. Well, I mean, we can talk about how to like shift our consciousness and raise our consciousness, and we're going to do a little bit more with that. But in your opinion, when does consciousness actually occur? Like, when do we get that? I mean, we're not getting into the conversation about when does life begin, but when do you think consciousness starts to happen? And that's taking into account many things. I know people who remember past life experiences, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, the notion of it all. When does consciousness occur, in your opinion?
That is such a personal thing. And I wonder if it depends on where a person is at with their accepting of what consciousness means. So we're not talking about babies, like does it begin at conception, or does it begin right before the baby is born? But that is something to talk about in the future, because I do past life work, and there are times where a soul decides, I don't want to come in, I'm not ready. And so that could be for another time. But when does consciousness occur? I think it occurs, personally speaking, when we are ready to embrace it. So there was a time, so it's different for everybody.
Well, I'm even going to ask, so you don't think that everyone, regardless of where they are in their journey, has a consciousness?
I do think everybody has a consciousness, but it's kind of like a continuum. And I don't mean this with any disrespect, but it's a continuum. If this is someone who's not super conscious, which means awake and aware of your surroundings, right? And then there's somebody who may be considered an ideal, like an ascended master or something. We are all somewhere on that continuum. We all have consciousness. Now, when it doesn't match our consciousness, that's when it can be frustrating. But the challenge for us is when we're working with someone that's just in a different place because they have different experiences, culture, they're a different person on their own path. It's not to be judged, but when we come into that clash where we're working with someone and we're just not on the same page, I think it helps me to come back to a place of love and just look at them as a being of light. So that takes away the judgment that may come up with me, that I'm better or someone's smarter or wiser than somebody else, because that's not true. And that was the gift that I've received over the last couple of years with losing my dad's, was nobody's better than anybody else. Everyone does have consciousness. They're just at different places.
Two interesting things that you just said. One is that you look at consciousness on the continuum, and I want to talk about that. And then the notion that we may or may not be better than other people based on our consciousness. Let's go with the continuum first, because I kind of see it not necessarily as a continuum, but as a radiating circle, one's consciousness, right? Because I know people who are their consciousness is extremely expanded in certain areas, but other areas it's quite retarded. And I don't mean retarded as in developmentally, but just as in, it's restricted in other ways, right? So like it's not a complete circle. It's like really jagged. And there are ways for them to expand that consciousness. And that's what I mean when I think of expanding one's consciousness. It's like to expand that circle and then to get it wider. So I think it's interesting that we see consciousness and the development in different ways. And I love that. I do. And I hope we continue to share how we see things so that other people can see them and see how they fit into things. And, let us know how you guys see consciousness, please. The other thing is about judging people's consciousness. I try not to be in a place where I'm like, there's a hierarchy of consciousness, but I think there's a hierarchy of consciousness. And I really do hope that throughout this series that we can help people expand their consciousness because I think it will make them better people.
I want to be gentle and delicate with my word choice, but I've got a lot of people in my circle and family that just, look at me like, what the hell are you talking about? And I know that that's not the place to go and spew information about past lives or expanding our consciousness. But the thing about expanding your consciousness and developing your intuition is that you can see that. So I can see that person that I'm thinking of in my mind. I love him. He is a wonderful man. But if he heard what we were talking about now, he'd just be like, he'd turn the channel. It has no meaning for him. That doesn't take away from the fact that he's a wonderful person.
Not at all. Not at all.
So it's not with judgment that we talk about consciousness and one being better. We were also kind of thinking about the caste system of some cultures and how no matter what you do, you are just not worthy enough in the eyes of the ruling caste. So we are all on a path, and everyone's consciousness is to be honored because we all have that light within us. And that light helps me remember that we are all beings of light. We come from the same source, and we are all beings of light.
Well, I would like to then interject this notion that one's consciousness is separate from one's personhood. You can be a fantastic person with a very limited consciousness. Perhaps you have stumbled into being a good person.
You said that.
Perhaps you have never been in a situation where your lack of expanded consciousness has been an issue, but perhaps that is because you don't have an expanded consciousness. So I do want to differentiate between the person and their consciousness.
Yes.
I know a lot of really not smart people who are great people. I know a lot of really smart people who are not great people. So being a good person is more important to me than anything else.
Absolutely.
But in this episode, in this particular component of our journey, we really are talking about consciousness. And I kind of do think that there's,
So in a little while, we're going to talk about ways to raise our consciousness. But I think we should mention something that happened that is what I call a cosmic 2x4 knocking you upside the head. And we have had those both in our life. And I want to talk about a recent one because I've seen it develop as a pattern. When I first retired, it took a couple of years to just decompress from the whole being a teacher thing. That was a humdinger on my consciousness. But then I remember going out on a walk, and I was on this beautiful cliff at that place below the monastery where I took you. And I just said, universe, show me what's next. Show me what I can do, and I want to be of service. And the message that I received was, okay, you're going to get it. But I didn't see anything. Nothing became clear for a while. And then I took a trip, a couple trips by myself, and made the connection that when I travel by myself, that's when weird things happen. Starting from the time we lived in the Philippines, and I took my first trip at 14 years old by myself to Manila, which was not easy. Something happened on that trip where consciousness expanded. Now, I want to fast forward to the trip I took a year or two ago, and I was in London for 3 super fun weeks. And I was on a bridge. It was a cold but very clear, sunny day. And I was standing on the bridge looking at everything and saying, I can't believe I got this experience, and trying not to feel guilty about, Ray being at home, taking care of the animals and everything. And I said, this is such a gift to have all this. My whole life I've been waiting. So what's next for me? Can you show me what's next for me, keeping in mind that I want to be of service and I want to grow? What's next? And that's when the freaky thing happened that we've talked about before. And it's going to be a conversation later where I saw what I perceived to be a crystalline grid, almost like all of these lines above me connecting high up into space. And I thought, oh, what's this? What's going on? Maybe it was my cheap sunglasses or something that was causing this, but I know that it wasn't. And the message I received was, you have a good time on this trip. Enjoy yourself, because when you get back, you're going to have a lot to deal with. There's going to be things that come up. And sure enough, there were. And that same experience happened to me over and over again. A few years ago in 2019, same situation. I was in Florence looking at the river and feeling a little guilty about, being here by myself. And I said, what's next? How can it get any better than this? Dang, what am I looking at? And Spirit came through and said, you enjoy yourself, because you're going to have a lot to deal with when you come back. And I thought, oh my God, what does that mean? And when I did come back, that was when everything started to change. When we talk about our parents and the changes in our parents, shortly after that, Ray and I found ourselves in a very different place, having to deal with the passing of his parents, my folks, all that. So there were all of these unexpected things that I got to learn, all as a result of saying, what's next for me? I am ready to be of service. Show me what's next. And it might have been freaky and not have made sense at the beginning, but the more you ponder it, it just all makes sense and empowers us even more. So I'm so grateful. And I know that when we declare and say, I am ready to open up my conscious, expand my thinking, stuff happens.
I have a similar story, but before I go into it, I just want to let you know that your husband Ray has said, I don't mind watching the house and the animals while you travel. So
I know he says that, but how, I'm sitting there with, the champagne and everything. How can I not feel guilty? So I guess that's just something I have to work on.
Well, and you have a tortoise, which we will see. I don't know, actually, I don't want you to adjust your camera, but just above you in the upper right corner of the screen that people are looking at is the bottom chin of Jub Jub, who is your 20-year-old.
He just turned 21. He's legal.
Your 21-year-old sulcata tortoise. So taking care of Jub Jub is not an easy task, but Ray, you are an amazing guy, and I love that you allow Tammy to do what she needs to do. Well, for me, my experience with getting expanding my consciousness really came down to me actually saying out loud that I wanted to learn the inner workings of the universe and all of its power. And I wanted it revealed to me in a way that didn't overwhelm me, but that allowed me to share it with the rest of the world. And days after that, I had friends in my home, and I said, you guys, you know what? I want a summer romance. And they're like, what does that mean? I said, I want it to have a definite end date. I wanted it to be with someone who looks like someone I've always wanted to date. And I want love to flow freely from our lips. Those components are kind of important, and we'll talk about that when we talk about manifesting. But the love part was key, because 2 days later, I met this guy, Michael, and he looked like someone I've always wanted to date. And even to this day, even though Michael is married to his amazing husband, Shane, and they have a fabulous life in New York, Michael and I still have this place of love for each other because we both went through so many amazing things during the time that we had together. So words matter. Like, your intention to expand your consciousness matters. And we have other ways that we know can help people, you, our viewing audience, to expand their consciousness. One of the first ways you've already touched on is traveling, right? To go from where you live and what you consider to be your norm and go to another place to see how other people live and see what's important to them is super huge in terms of expanding your consciousness. And in this way, consciousness is being driven by empathy as well as just generally new experiences.
Absolutely. And there's something that keeps coming up with me too, is curiosity.
Yes.
And I often quote the love of my life I'll never know, Leonardo da Vinci. And I don't know why I have an attraction for old, short, gay men, but I do. He's one of those people that to me was the most fabulous human being. And one of the things that he advocated is curiosity. You can't go anywhere until you have curiosity or curiosita. And I know as a school teacher, there were some kids that had so much curiosity and they just learned and they were a joy to be with. And I think I know I learned from them. So being curious is part of it. And I think it's part of our consciousness. If we're not curious, if we don't want to learn anything or grow or get out of our comfort zone, then we are not expanding our consciousness.
Well, because it also opens one up to the fact that there are other things out there other than that which we know. And our sense of curiosity is going to allow us to experience those things and want to try to make sense of them and to incorporate them into who we are as beings. Absolutely. And that also shows up or can be fed by another way of expanding your consciousness, and that's by reading. Reading is going to expose you to someone else's imagination. It can expose you to new factual information and can guide your exploration.
And don't you find it, I get kind of excited when I think about it because I get to learn whatever I want now. It's not just something that I have to do to prepare for a class of, first graders,
Right.
But it's stuff I really want to learn. And then I find out, oh, there's all this other stuff I want to learn, which leads to more stuff that I want to learn. I just hope that with all the great stuff I'm learning, I remember it because I'm getting a little ditzy with my old age sometimes. But everything you learn empowers you and opens up your thinking.
It really does. It really does. Even if you don't think that it does, you can't help but to look at something in a completely different way once you've done that.
Yeah. Just as a little side note, shout out to David Cassidy, because because of him, I learned to read because I wasn't learning to read in first grade. They were just crappy at teaching it. But I was in love with David Cassidy in first grade. I'm pretty sure that if he just met me, he would fall madly in love with me. But they had those Tiger Beat magazines and all that.
Yes.
And I wanted to read it. And so that's what taught me how to read, and Sesame Street. So there, learning pays off and reading pays off, whether it's something shallow like David Cassidy or something really exciting like history.
Yes. So in other words, lust can be an impetus for expanding your consciousness and other abilities.
I think it might put you in a better mood too, at least for me.
Well, it's invigorating in certain ways. So I wholeheartedly support that. Another way to expand your consciousness is through meditation.
Yeah. I used to be really strict about teaching meditation, but over the last year, it's been shown to me that there are a lot of different ways to meditate, and we're going to talk about that on a later episode. But in short, meditation does open you up to a new way of thinking because you're putting yourself in a place where you can just ponder something or nothing at all. But meditation can also come when you are traveling or reading or learning something new because you're bringing that into your consciousness and internalizing it, which is a form of meditation. I have a girlfriend that says, I feel guilty that I don't meditate the way you taught me, but she's doing great because she runs every day in nature and she's a tree hugger, and that, you know how trees have energy, that interaction puts her in that place of opening up her consciousness. So with meditation, it's a very good thing, but not the only way. And there's a lot of different ways to do meditation.
I couldn't agree with you more. My friend Amanda, I went out to lunch with her with another friend of hers who had just gotten back from a retreat. And on that retreat, they were all assigned different tasks. And those tasks were called meditations. And it made me realize that when I do certain things just around the house, I will do certain things when I need to clear my mind, whether it be like deciding to clean a particular area or a particular type of thing where I know that I can just lose my consciousness into a task where I come out of it having thought about something completely different. I like to drive or move at fast speeds to get connected to things and to write. And even when I lived in New York, I would sometimes get on the train just so I could be on the train to write. And I would write a bunch of stuff and then I would come back home and then do those tasks. But it would allow me to get in connection. So, if you're watching this and you're wondering, do you meditate already or how do you meditate? I just want to make sure that people understand that there are all different types of ways to tap into your own meditation. And none of them are any hierarchically better than any other. So.
Absolutely. And it really comes around to intention. Mm-hmm. What is your intention to meditate?
Yep.
Well, that's a personal thing, right? That's where everyone is at their own place on their own path in the time that it is supposed to be. Yep. So when you're ready, it happens.
Yep. We have a couple more examples of ways to expand your consciousness. Meeting new people. I mean, this taps into in so many different ways. Traveling and physically meeting new people, reading and meeting new people, like through your imagination and getting to know them through someone else's words, but also just deciding that you're going to go out into the world and join new clubs, socialize, and even just speak to people when you're out and about.
Yeah. How come it is whenever I am out and about or traveling, I have really cool interactions with people. Mm-hmm. I'm like a whole different person even. I'm actually quite pleasant and jolly. So meeting new people is key.
Yeah. And then we have just experimentation and getting out of your comfort zone, which, again, there's kind of a somewhat of a theme here, but however you hear it, however it is that you decide to incorporate it into your world, these are the different ways that we see. And then there's one more. Did you have something you want to say about this?
No, keep going.
The last one that we were going to talk about in this particular episode, to expand your consciousness, is to change your vocabulary. We're in a world now where there are some people who are talking about pronouns. There are other people who look at the world of being sort of politically correct as being all this negativity and it's, infringing upon who I am. It's because it's expanding your consciousness. It's making you think about and seeing the world in a way that makes you have to manifest it through your body, and it's changing you. And that resistance is that resistance to change and expanding one's consciousness.
Yeah. And part of why we brought up the definition of cosmic consciousness is because we are changing our vocabulary. Our vocabulary has changed over the last couple years since we started brainstorming this, as evidenced by our discussions about consciousness, because it means something very different now than it did just 2 years ago. I used to thought I knew a lot about consciousness, but the more I learn, the less I know, which is a good thing.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, and what I have loved about even just putting together this particular show, as well as the whole series with you, is that it's always made us go back and rethink what we thought we knew as we tried to make sure that it was what we wanted to tell other people. So people should understand that they are getting, a cooked down version of lots of knowledge that we hope is digestible and appeasing to the eye, as well as to the mental and physical taste buds here at Spiritual Diner.
Yeah, we're so excited about learning new things, especially at this place in our life. I
Yep.
thought I was done. I was retired. So it is so exciting to learn new things. And it is so exciting when you're working with someone and they have an aha moment or you have an aha moment. One thing I love about psychic work is every time I do a reading, I think I get more out of it than the person that's having the reading. Every new experience leaves us with something to take away, especially when we're open with the open mind and heart and ready to expand our consciousness.
Yeah. And it actually feels, I like the way that it feels when my consciousness is being expanded. It's like more space and more room for more love. How does it feel for you?
Yes, I think so. And I brought up my dad's passing because when I saw that beam of light and his thinking was, I'm sorry I didn't do enough. But my thinking was, you did just fine. You did the best you can. And then that light was coming through. I was just kind of smacked with the idea that we are all made of light. Everything is about love. So if we're coming from a place of love and learning new things, making new connections, we can't help but expand. After that thing with my dad, like I think I mentioned, it was like all these layers were stripped away. And the biggest gift was forgiveness. I felt this big wave of forgiveness for a lot of injustices, because I'm kind of an overly sensitive person and all. And so I guess what I'm saying is when you expand your consciousness, there's a huge wave of love and forgiveness. They go hand to hand, hand in hand, and it's fun.
I'm all choked up by that, but it's so very true. And what I love about the story you told about your father is that when he said, of course you would say that, he saw you. He completely and truly saw the being of light and love that you were. And that's really, really, truly.
And that was the gift that I don't think my family gets, and I haven't really shared with them, but it was so huge.
Yeah. Wow.
And that's the beautiful thing about connecting with people through a conscious way, whether it's a banana slug or someone who's passed or someone that you love.
Absolutely. Wow. Well, Tammy, we are almost near the end of this particular meal, so it's time to show the bill and let everybody know that this has been a great conversation. And I know personally, this has truly, truly fed my soul in so many different ways. Not just having this conversation with you, but actually bringing this show to fruition and being able to share it with people forever. So what are you taking away from this conversation?
I'm taking away, thank God I haven't had any technical problems yet. But I'm just taking away that it's really refreshing and inspiring to share the things that we learn with other people and to learn from them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. And for me, it's the notion that we've shared a bunch of love between us. And I truly hope that we have shared a bunch of love with anyone and everyone who happens to watch this. So we're going to ask that if you have found any value in this show, if you've had a moment where you have laughed or wanted to cry or whatever, please like this episode, subscribe wherever you are seeing it so that you will never miss an episode. And please follow us. We are Spiritual Diner on all social media platforms.
And be sure to tell a friend about the show because the world could use more patrons at our Spiritual Diner.
Yes, indeed. So mark your calendar because you have a reservation to join us on the next episode of Spiritual Diner on next Wednesday when our topic will be the power of words. And I do have to give Tammy one little shameless plug. For those of you who would like to see more of me, you can catch me on He Said, He Said, He Said, which is a look at the world from a seasoned Black man's perspective. You can visit Linktree, that's linktr.ee/he said to find out more information. But I am spreading this kind of love and everything on another platform every week, every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
And as a white girl, I find it very interesting. I learn a lot. And when you had the guest last week, oh my gosh, I wanted to say, her producer, you know, I have a thing for Niall, but I didn't. I wanted to say, tell me about your relationship with him, but I didn't. But my point is, there's always something good on He Said, He Said, He Said.
Yes, I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
So until next time, keep your consciousness open.
And we would like to leave you with a quote. We will let you know that you have it in you, the strength, patience, and passion to reach for the stars and to change the world. It has been a pleasure serving you today at the Spiritual Diner. I am Vash Boddie.
I'm Tammy Reyes. Until next time, keep your consciousness open.
Bye.
Blessings.